Hey there, hope you're having a wonderful day. In this video, we're going to be coding a Sudoku game in Java. So I have the Sudoku game over here, and at the top, you can see the word Sudoku and the number of errors you've made for this game. And on the bottom, we have the numbers that we can select from. So let's say I select 7. You can see the button turns gray, indicating that we are currently selecting 7. And let's say I put the number in the wrong box, so over here, then the error count goes up by 1. Okay? And if you put it in the correct box, then the number will stay and the error count will not go up. And you can switch numbers. So let's say I want to do 4 next. And you can click on a tile that already has a number, but nothing will happen. So yeah, this is what we'll be creating in this video. And very quickly, before we begin coding, I just want to mention that I have a variety of tutorials on my YouTube channel. So I have game programming projects in Python, Java, and HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I also have some programming basics over here in Python and C++. And you can also click to jump to a tutorial section. So these are all the Java game tutorials that I have on my YouTube channel. So I have Pac-Man, Blackjack, Flappy Bird, Chrome Dinosaur. I also have a calculator project and Snake, and there'll be more tutorials to come for Java game projects. And currently we have Sudoku. And you can find the list of tutorials on my YouTube channel, as well as on kenyipcoding.com. And if you want to stay up to date for more Java game tutorials like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Alright, so for this tutorial, I'll be using Visual Studio Code, and I highly recommend that you do the same. If you want to learn how to set up Java with Visual Studio Code, I have a video on that, and I'll link it in the description below. Alright, so let's begin. Press Ctrl-Shift-P, Java, create Java project, no build tools, and I'm going to select the desktop as my project location, and for the project name, we'll call it Sudoku. Alright, so we have our project folder. Just click on the source folder. And we have this app.java file, and this is our main file. So let's just run our program. So I'm going to click run Java, and you can see we get hello world. Alright, so first I'm going to right click on the source folder, new Java file, class, and the class name will be Sudoku. And here I'm going to create an instance of Sudoku. So I'm going to delete this. Sudoku is equal to new Sudoku. And that's all we need for our app.java file, so we can close this and collapse this. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is import a few things. So import java.awt.*, import java.awt.event.*, and import javax.swing.*. So these are the libraries that we'll be using for our graphical user interface. And the first thing I want to do is create a window. So here, let's just define the width and height of our window. So I'm going to create 2 variables. So board width, and I'm going to make it 600 pixels. And board height, I'm going to make it 650 pixels. So to create a window in Java, we're going to use a JFrame. So JFrame, frame is equal to new JFrame. And in here, we can pass in a string for the title of the window. So I'm just going to call it Sudoku. All right, now let's add a constructor. So Sudoku. And in here, I'm just going to add some settings for our window. So first, let's just make the window visible. So frame.setVisible true. And then let's set the dimensions of the window. So frame.setSize board width and board height. And I'm going to make it so that the user cannot resize the window by dragging on the sides. So frame.setResizable to false. And then I'm going to make it so that when the user clicks on the X button of the window, it's going to terminate the program. So frame.setDefaultClose operation. I'm going to make this jFrame.ExitOnClose. And let's also center our window. So frame.setLocation relative to null. And finally, let's add a layout. So frame.setLayout new border layout. So with a border layout, we can place components north, south, east, west, or center. So we can organize our components and place them in a specific position within our window. All right, so let's just save and run the program and see what we have so far. So we have a window here and it's centered, and we have a width of 600 pixels and a height of 650 pixels. All right, so now the next thing we need to do is add a few components. There are 3 components we need to add. The first one is going to be a panel for the text, which displays the word Sudoku and the number of errors made by the player. And then we need another panel for the Sudoku board itself. And then we need a third panel for the buttons that the user can click on. So let's start with the text. So for the text, we need 2 things. We need a label and then we need a panel. So the label is going to hold the text, and the panel is going to hold the label, and then we place the panel within our window, which is the frame. So I'm going to do JLabel, text label is equal to new JLabel, and JPanel, text panel, is equal to new JPanel. All right, now let's add some properties for our text label. So the first thing I'm going to do is text label.set font, new font, and we're going to make it Arial, font.bold, and we'll make the font size 30. Next, we want to place the text at the center of our label. So I'm going to do text label.set horizontal alignment, and this is going to be JLabel.center. And finally, let's set the text. So text label.set text, and we're going to write Sudoku :0. Okay, so we have our text label, and now we need to add the label to the panel. So text panel dot add text label, and then we need to add the panel to the window, which is the JFrame. So frame dot add text panel. All right, let's save and run the program. And you can see we have the text panel over here, and the text is Sudoku 0. And when I add my next panel, which is the board, I want to make sure that the text label is always above the board. So here in the window, when I do frame.add, I'm going to specify the position. In this case, I'll do border layout.north. So this ensures that the text panel will be placed on the north side of the window. So we want to make sure that the text panel will stay over here when we add our Sudoku board. Alright, so the next thing we need is a JPanel for the board. So I'm going to create another JPanel, and I'll call it board panel is equal to new JPanel. So this is going to hold all the buttons for our Sudoku board. And before we go and create the board, we need to create a puzzle. So I'm just going to paste over here. And as you can see, I've pasted 2 arrays of strings. So the first array is going to be the puzzle, and the second array is going to be the solution. So you can see for the solution, we have all numbers, and for the puzzle, we have a bunch of dashes. So each dash is going to represent an empty tile within our Sudoku board. So what I'm going to do is use a double for loop, iterate through each string of our array here. And then within each string, I'm going to iterate through each character and create a button for the number. And with a Sudoku board, we have 9 tiles by 9 tiles. And when we're playing the game, we want to make sure that every time the player places a number on an empty tile, we know where to check for the solution. So let's say we want to place a number over here next to this 6. Well, the solution would be 5. So this is going to correspond to this puzzle over here. And how do we know what to check when we place the number? Well, it's going to be the row and column coordinate. Basically, with an array, we have indices, right? So this is index 0 because this is the first string in the array. So this is index 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So where is that 5? It's going to be up here at index 1, and that's row 1. And which column? It's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. So this position is going to be row number 1 and column number 3. So we're going to represent all of our tiles as JButtons, but we want to also save some additional information, which is the row and column coordinates. So up here, I'm going to create another class, and this is going to be class tile extends JButton. So here we're doing some inheritance, and for those of you who don't know what inheritance is, basically we're creating another class called tile, and it's taking on the properties of a JButton. So it's going to have all the properties and methods and functionalities of a JButton, except we can add additional things. And I want to add 2 integers, one for the row number and one for the column number. So this is going to keep additional information for where that button is within our 9x9 grid. So here I'm going to create a constructor, so tile, int r, int c, and I'm going to assign these 2 parameters. So this dot r is equal to r, and this dot c is equal to c. So instead of creating JButtons, we're going to create tiles, which are basically JButtons with 2 additional parameters. Alright, so we have our board panel. Now let's set some properties. So over here, I'm going to set a layout for the board panel. So board panel dot set layout, new grid layout, and it's going to be 9x9. So the board panel is going to have a total of 81 buttons or tiles. And so we're going to create a grid layout of 9 rows and 9 columns. And there's going to be a lot of code that we'll be writing for setting up the board panel. So instead of putting everything in the constructor, I'm just going to create a separate function so that it's neater. So I'm going to do setup tiles. And let's define the function over here. So it's going to be void setup tiles. And basically, we want to iterate through each row and column of our puzzle. So I'm going to do for int r is equal to 0, r is less than 9, r plus plus. So this is for each row. Then within each row, I'm going to check each column. So for int c is equal to 0, c is less than 9, c plus plus. And we need to create a tile. So again, the tile is basically a JButton, except we're going to pass in 2 parameters. So new tile, r and c. So this is going to keep track of the row and column coordinates for this button. And then we need to get the character. So car tile car is equal to puzzle. So this is our array of strings. So we want the row. So this is going to give us a string, and we want that specific character at the specific column. So in Java, with a string, we can't just use the index operator for getting a character. We would have to do dot car at. Okay, so we're getting that string row, and within that row, we're getting that single character. Now let's set the character to the button, tile.setText. And here you can see we need to pass in a string and not a character. So I'm going to do string dot value of tile car. And then we need to do board panel dot add tile. Okay, so once we create the tile, we're going to add it to our JPanel. And after we finish adding 81 buttons or tiles to our board panel, we need to add the board panel to our window. So I'm going to do frame.add board panel. And here I'm going to do border layout dot center. Okay, let's save and run the program. And you can see we have our 9x9 board. And if I click on these boards, you can see there's a rectangle around each text. So let's get rid of that. And to get rid of that, all you have to do is tile.setFocusable false. Okay, let's save and run the program again. So we have our 9 tiles, and if I click on any of them, you can see there's no rectangle around the text. Now let's style this up a bit, and the first thing I want to do is get rid of these dashes. So we're going to add some split logic. If the current character is a dash, we don't want to add the dash. Instead, we're going to make it empty. Alright, so over here, I'm going to add a check if tile car is not equal to the dash character, then we can set the text. So if it's not a dash, then it is not empty. So I'm going to copy and paste this over here. All right, now let's save and run the program. And you can see our buttons are missing, and that is because when I'm recording a video, my computer slows down and the window does not render properly sometimes. So to get around this, what we should do is set the frame visible at the very end when we add all of our components. So what I'm going to do is scroll back up here and copy and paste this. So I'm going to comment this out, and then I'm going to scroll all the way down and paste it here. So basically the idea here is you don't want to set the frame visible until you've added all of your components. So let's go back down here and I'm going to save and run the program again. All right, now you can see we have our 9 tiles, and if it was a dash, then we wouldn't add any text. Now let's style up each tile. So here I'm going to do tile.set font, and it's going to be new font, Arial. And we're going to distinguish the numbers that we started with by making them bold. So font.bold, and we'll set the font size to 20. So I don't want to use the default color of a J button. So I'm going to do tile.set background, color.light gray. And then here I'm going to do else. This else means that we do have a dash. So this is the empty tile. I'm going to do tile.set font, new font, Arial, font.plain, and font size 20. And because we have a dash, I'm not going to set any text, but I will set the background. So tile.set background, and we're going to make it white. So color.white. All right, now let's save and run the program. All right, so we have our default numbers here, and they're bold, and the background is a light gray color, and the tiles that we can add numbers to, the background is white. Now, the next thing I want to do is add some border lines. So we should add a line over here and a line over here. So this is at index 0, 1, 2. So on row 2, for each tile, I want to add a thick borderline at the bottom. And then we want to do the same for tile at index 3, 4, 5. So we want to do it on row index 5. So let's go ahead and do that. So here we're going to make a check if r is equal to 2 or r is equal to 5. So if this tile is on the 5th or 2nd row, I'm going to add a border. So tile.set border, border factory, dot create matte border, and we need to specify the thickness of each side. So we want to make the bottom thicker, so we're going to make it 5 pixels. And for the other 3 sides, top, left, right, we're going to make it 1. So here you can see the first parameter is top, and then the next parameter is left, and the third parameter is bottom. So I'm going to do 1 for top, 1 for left, 5 for bottom, and 1 for right. And we need to specify the color. So I'm going to do color.black. All right, now let's save and run the program. All right, so you can see for the tiles at row index 3, we've created a thicker border on the bottom, and we did the same for the tiles at row index 5. And for the other sides, we just have a thickness of 1. Now let's do the same for column index 0, 1, 2. So over here, we want to make the right side thicker, and we want to do the same for column index 3, 4, 5. So we want to add a thicker border on the right side. So over here, I'm going to do else if column is equal to 2 or column is equal to 5. And if so, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. And remember, the ordering was top, left, bottom, right. So top is 1, left is 1, bottom should be 1, and the right should be 5. Okay, let's save and run the program. And you can see for the tiles at columns 2 and 5, we have a thicker border on the right side. Now we have an issue, and that is for these corner tiles, they only have the bottom border, And that is because for each of these corner tiles, the row and column coordinates would be 2 and 5. So we need to account for these 4 tiles. So for these 4 tiles, the row and column coordinates will be the combination of 2 and 5. So I'm going to make this else, and over here I'm going to do if r is equal to 2 and column is equal to 2, or r is equal to 2 and column is equal to 5, or r is equal to 5 and column is equal to 2, or r is equal to 2 and c is equal to 5. So these are the 4 corner tiles, and so I'm going to copy and paste this. And remember, the ordering is top left, bottom right. So we want the bottom and right to be thick. So we have 5, 5. All right, now let's save and run the program. And you can see we have our dividers over here, and we have it fixed for these corner tiles. Actually, I think I made a mistake for this one. So this is row number 5 and column number 5. Yep, so this should be a 5. So make sure you fix this part. Okay, so let's save and run the program again. And you can see we fixed that corner. So now we have these dividers, and we need to fix the rest of the buttons. So the ones that are not in row or column 2 and 5. So here I'm going to do else tile.set border factory dot create line border. And this is similar to a matte border. The only difference is you don't specify the thickness of the left, top, right, and bottom. So I'm going to just assign a color. So color.black. So let's save and run the program. And there you go. So we have our Sudoku board. Now the next thing I want to do is add one more panel for the numbers. So over here, I'm going to create another J panel. So J panel, buttons panel is equal to new J panel. So over here, I'm going to do buttons panel dot set layout, new grid layout. And unlike with the board panel, we just need 1 row and 9 columns. And here I'm going to do something similar, just like what we did for the tiles. I'm going to create another function called setup buttons. So let's scroll down. Over here, I'm going to create another function, void setup buttons. And we're going to iterate from 1 to 9. So for int I is equal to 1, I is less than 10, I++. And we don't need tiles for this one, so I'm just going to directly create J buttons. So J button, button is equal to new J button. And then I'll do button.set font, new font, Arial, font.bold, and the font size will be 20. Button.set text. We're going to do string.value of I. So this is going to be from 1 to 9. Button.set focusable, false. Button.set background. We're going to make it color.white. And finally, let's do buttons panel.add button. So we're going to create 9 buttons and add them to the buttons panel. And then we're going to add the buttons panel to our window. So frame.add buttons panel border layout.south. All right, now let's save and run the program. And we have our board panel and our buttons panel. So we have 9 buttons. All right, so that's all we need for our user interface. Now the next thing we need to do is add some click handlers. So I'm going to start with the buttons. So when I click on a button, I want the button to be visibly selected. So over here, I'm going to add 2 more variables, JButton, num selected, and I'll set it to null. So this is going to keep track of the button that we select, and I'll just create another integer, errors, and set this to 0. All right, let's scroll all the way down. And over here in my setup buttons function, I'm going to create an action listener. So button.add action listener, new action listener. And we need to define a public void action performed, action event E. So E refers to the action that was performed. So basically it's going to be a click, and we need to figure out the source of that click. So it's going to be a J button. Button is equal to, and here I'm going to cast it to J button, E.get source. So what happens if we click on a number button? Well, we need to save it. So I'm going to do num selected is equal to button. And after we save it, we need to identify it in the UI which button was saved. So I'm going to do num selected dot set background color dot light gray. So let's save and run the program. And you can see we have our buttons here, and I click on 3. Now the background changes to a light gray color. So this indicates that 3 was selected. Now, if I change the number selected to 5, you can see it also changes color, but we also need to make this 3 change back to white. Otherwise, all of them will change color. So here, I'm going to make a check. If num selected is not equal to null, I'll do num selected dot set background to color dot white. So let's save and run the program. All right, so now if I select number 3 and then 5, you can see it's changing every time. All right, so now we can select the numbers. The final thing we need to do is be able to select on the tiles to add the number. So let's go back to our setup tiles function. And at the bottom, I'm going to do tile.add action listener, new action listener. And we need to define public void, action performed, action event E. So it's similar to our setup buttons. So we need to get the tile that was clicked on. So tile is equal to a cast of tile E.get source. And let's get the row and column coordinates. So int r is equal to tile.r and int c is equal to tile.c. All right, so when we click on a tile, we want to make sure that we also have a number selected. So I'm going to do if num selected is not equal to null, then I'm going to get the text of the number selected. So string num selected text is equal to num selected dot get text. So we're going to get the number of the button that was selected. Now here comes the part where we use the row and column to identify the tile that was selected. So we want to take that tile that was selected and check to see if the num selected matches the solution at the same coordinates. So I'm going to do string tile solution is equal to string dot value of solution at index r dot char at c. So we're going to compare the solution at that row and column with the number that we selected. So before we check the solution, I want to do one more thing, and that is over here, I'm going to do if tile.getText is not equal to an empty string. This means that we already have the solution placed. I'm going to return. So this is for if a user clicked on a tile with a starting number or a tile that already has the correct number. Otherwise, we can make the check. So I would do if tile solution is equal to num selected text. We're going to place that number onto the tile. So tile.setText num selected text. Else, this means that we didn't get the right tile. So I'm going to do errors plus equal 1, and then we need to update the text label. So text label dot set text, and here I'm going to write Sudoku colon space plus string dot value of errors. All right, now let's save and run the program. So if you remember, this over here was 5. And you can see when I put 5 here, the error count is going up. What about over here, here, and here? So it has to be in one of these 4 tiles. So the reason why we're getting an error is because of Java. So let's check our code. And the error has to do with this equal. So when we're doing equal, we are checking to see if these 2 variables reference the same object. So we have two string objects here. Instead, what we need to do is check to see if they have the same value. So these two variables are two different string objects. They can have the same value, but they're in different memory locations. So instead of doing equal equal, I'm going to do dot equals, and this is going to check for the value. So let's save and run the program, and I'll press 5 and place it over here. Now you can see it works. So we don't have an error, but if I place 5 over here, we get errors. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this Sudoku tutorial, and I can try to complete the game. So I'm going to play the game and then cut it when I finish. Alright, so I finished the game, and you can see I have 87 errors, and that is because I was too lazy to look at the solution, so I was just clicking around randomly. But yeah, so you can see the error count works, and we have a completed Sudoku game. Now, one thing you can do is add a check to see if we actually completed the game. So visually, I can see that we filled the board, so the solution is correct. But what you can do is add a check to make sure that we have completed the solution. And the way to do so is you would just count how many dashes are in the puzzle. So the dashes represent the white empty tiles. And every time I get a tile correct, you would subtract 1 from the count. And if that count reaches 0, then you can display a message over here saying Sudoku board completed with the error count. Okay, so that's one thing I would like you to work on. Another thing you can do is add more Sudoku puzzles and set them at random. So I currently only supplied one puzzle for this tutorial, and for each puzzle you need to have the solution defined already. Another feature you can add is you can add one J panel down here with 5 buttons, and these 5 buttons could be easy, medium, hard. So these are for difficulty levels, and you can also add 2 more buttons, which is reset and solve. So for reset, you can just reset all the white tiles back to empty and the error count back to 0. And for the solve, you would just show the user the solution. But yeah, that's just some enhancements that I would like you to consider. If you found this tutorial helpful, make sure you give this video a like. And if you have any questions, let me know down below in the comments. And if you want to stay up to date for more Java tutorials, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.